present. I don't believe we have any apologies tonight. Councillor Drury's just next door and we'll be heading in a second. Notice of webcasting. For the benefit of the citizens in the gallery, these proceedings are webcast live onto YouTube and then recorded there for posterity, so please be conscious of the fact that your remarks are in the public domain. Could I ask everyone to please stand, disclosures. Any disclosures, councillors? No disclosures? Excellent. Can I ask everyone to please stand for a moment of quiet contemplation? Please be seated. Confirmation of the minutes of the 25th of June 2019. Is there any councillor who wishes to clarify those or to correct them? If not, will someone move their adoption? Moved by councillor Passis, seconded by councillor Lockie. All those in favour, against, declare that carried unanimously. We'll now move into the public forum to hear from all registered speakers. There's only one item tonight for which there is registered speakers, but there are too many speakers registered for that. There are more speakers registered for that item than is allowable under the Code of
Mayor
Meeting
Byrne,
Practice.
could I seek to suspend standing orders, given that we've got 5 speakers here, but they're all for, and usually our rules would allow for 6 speakers, 3 for and 3 against. Could we move to suspend standing orders to allow all the speakers present, these 5, to speak?
So councillor Kiat is moving that all 5 speakers be allowed to speak. I'm personally against that procedural motion. But I will have to deal with that motion. So is there a seconder for that? Seconded by councillor Porteous. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That has been defeated. So I'm now going to ask of Daisy, Dylan, Dominic, Tristan and India, who have all registered to speak in support of councillor Kiat's motion. Only 3 of you are allowed to speak under our Code of Meeting Practice. Can I ask you just to briefly confer amongst yourselves? As a youth advocate, I'd like to suggest it'd be great to hear from the young people. And let me know if you're able to agree upon 3 of you who will represent your position. How's the caucus going there, guys? Excellent. Let me know which 3 of you are speaking. Daisy, are you one of the speakers? I'm asking for Daisy. There you go. Daisy's out. You're down to 4. Dylan, are you speaking, Dylan? Okay, India's going first. Thank you, India. Under the Code of Meeting Practice, you're allowed 3 minutes, at which point you'll hear, oh, thank goodness, that gentle warning bell, which has now been reinstituted after a brief period in which there was a much louder buzzer. You'll hear that after 2.5 minutes, and then after 3 minutes, you'll hear another buzzer, and at which time we'd like you to conclude your remarks. Over to you.
Thank you. And thanks for Tom for inviting me here to speak tonight and putting forward this incredibly important motion. We are in a climate emergency. Across the world, many people are already facing the impacts of climate change. Here in Australia, in the form of droughts, floods and heat waves, with our previous summer being the hottest on record. We all need to be doing everything in our ability, in our communities and through our networks, to ensure our government is doing everything in their ability to stop climate change. I am here today on behalf of the School Strike for Climate, which demands the active and just transition from the fossil fuel industry that is destroying our environment to the 100% renewable energy that we need by 2030. Our school strike movement has put climate change on the political agenda in Australia and made sure it isn't going away. On Friday, September 20th, 3 days before the world leaders meet in New York for the UN Emergency Climate Summit, school strikers, together with our friends, communities, and families, are holding our largest climate strike yet in Australia. In Sydney, police estimate 60,000 of us will gather at the Domain. Because of this, as stated in the quote from the motion, as I'm sure you all have, we school strikers are asking adults to join us in the movement for climate justice and on September 20th, because the changes we need to secure a safe future and safe climate for ourselves won't come without the action of workers too. Because of this, School Strike for Climate has been reaching out to Australians' unions to urge them to join the climate movement, and so far we've gained support from the Victorian and New South Wales divisions of the National Tertiary Union, the Maritime Union, and just last week I was at a meeting with the executive head of the Manufacturing Union, who are also planning to support the strike. This support is shown by the unions allowing and encouraging their workers to strike without penalty. While unfortunately strike action is an internationally recognised human right and has been one of the most effective means of forcing change throughout history, whether it be against war or for working conditions. It can be extremely difficult for workers in Australia to go on strike, and many schools have banned students from striking in the upcoming strike. And these restrictions are why the motion put forward by Councillor Tom is necessary to enable council staff, local workplaces and schools attendance to the strike without penalty. To achieve climate action, we need students and workers coming together from their different communities to fight together for the safety of their future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, India. Next registered speaker is Dominic Case of Balmain.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for this opportunity. I'm Dominic Case. I'm the president of Climate Change Balmain Rozelle. We can't fail to be impressed by the organisational abilities of the students here and around the world in driving this thing forward, and particularly by their international leader, if you like, Greta Thunberg from Sweden. I've got a little story, not from Sweden, but from not far away from there, from Iceland. It's a small island just outside the Arctic Circle. It's not covered in ice, but there are nearly 400 distinct glaciers across its rocky interior. At least there used to be. They are melting. Last year, the first one was deregistered as a glacier. It's called Aquatic. It disappeared completely. Next month, it'll be replaced by a brass plaque. The inscription reads, "A letter to the future." Ok is the first Icelandic glacier to lose its status as a glacier. In the next 200 years, all our glaciers are expected to follow the same path. This monument is to acknowledge that we know what is happening and what needs to be done. Only you, the reader, know if we did it. It's dated August 2019, 415 parts per million of carbon dioxide. So, that's fairly obvious. Why are school-aged students striking? Unlike many emergencies, the full impact of the changing climate won't hit us all at once. But it will go on hitting us for many years after we curb our carbon emissions. But the sooner we act, the more we can limit the damage. The challenge for those in power today is to act now for results for a generation and more in the future. And so far, there's nothing like enough being done. Now, the students' ambitious goal is to double the numbers attending the last rally in March. Australia-wide, that's going from 150,000 to 300,000. Worldwide, they're aiming for 3 million. Clearly, strong support from adults, especially workers, is vital. So we must do what we can to enable workers to provide this support on the day. 2 months ago, Inner West Council voted to declare a climate emergency. They're being followed by many other councils across the country and indeed around the world. Last month, Council recognised Jean Hinchliffe as the Amy Large Young Volunteer of the Year. Jean is one of the school student leaders who have organised the previous school strikes. So I urge Council to double down in its recognition of the climate challenge and its recognition and support for the young people who are working on this, and to support the students and their efforts for everyone's future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. Our last registered speaker is Tristan Ryan of Balmain East. Come forward, Dylan.
All right. Well, I'm really glad, but we had a school student here tonight, and it's unfortunate, but the other student didn't make it. I'm speaking as an Inner West resident for the last 20 years, and also a staff member at a very local large employer of the University of Sydney, where I'm a union member, a member of the NTU. I've also been a previous member of the United Services Union, but has coverage in the local government sector as well. I was extremely lucky, well, actually no, to rephrase that, me and my union colleagues at the University of Sydney passed a proposal in February to encourage staff to support the school strikers and to attend the rally. Subsequently, the employer released a statement saying that staff could attend the rally, and what that resulted in was, for me, quite a liberating moment of being able to work out my workplace and join hundreds of other staff, march down City Road, and eventually join the school strikers there and be with my little brother and sister who were also on strike that day. And that was an extremely great opportunity and something that I'll remember for the rest of my life, really. It was amazing. And I would hope that workers in the Inner West Council would also have that opportunity too. One thing I would like to also note on is that previously this council passed a motion in regards to raise the rate and acknowledged that, people who are subject to inequality in this area, those sleeping rough, those on New Start, for example. And I guess what I want to say here is make no mistake that climate change and a climate catastrophe won't treat everyone equally. And it's important that we view climate change as a social justice problem. And I think it's also very important that although we do stuff locally as a council and we have our own climate change plan, that we also don't act in isolation, because this is a global problem. And I would like us to do more than just release workers for the day, but also help build the strike. And that could include printing for the school strikers. That could include putting banners on public poles, which I see down the street, emailing constituencies, as well as those recommendations in the proposal. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll now get on with the business of the meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to move a suspension of standing orders, if I may. That is, I'd move that we suspend standing orders so that we can address this item alone, out of a matter of politeness to the people who've come along. I think, looking at it, I'm imagining that they are here for one item and one item only. And as you mentioned yourself, there includes young people. It's great to let them see democracy in order. So I hope that the majority of councillors might want to join me in supporting that motion. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll just seek advice from the council officers. Now, having voted on precisely this procedural motion, I think every council meeting for the duration of this term, recently we concluded a new code of meeting practice which determined that we would deal with all items on the agenda in sequential order rather than separating, coming first to the items for which there were registered speakers. Is that correct, Mr. Naylor?
Through the chair, that's correct. It's now in our code of meeting practice that the public forum is done as a whole, and then meetings in sequential order in order of the agenda.
Okay. On that basis, I'm going to rule that motion out of order. But the good news
Sorry,
is...
point of order, that's a procedural motion. So, I mean, can I ask a question through the chair?
Seek further
Don't we have
advice about
entitlement
whether
to
I'm
move
able to...
procedural motion?
Okay, I'll seek further clarification about whether it is proper practice for that to be ruled out of order from Mr. Naylor.
Through the chair, it's the code of meeting practice says that things should happen in a particular order, then the order should follow. If you wanted to change that order, then the policy would need to be changed because it doesn't allow for that to change.
Thank you for that. Councillor, would you like to move a motion of dissent, or would you like us just to get on with the business?
Chair, I'd like to question whether should is a definitive word,
No,
or whether
I'm sorry,
whether
Councillor.
it's should or is it
I'm sorry,
could?
councillor. I've ruled, and we've gained advice.
Well, I'm
that-
seeking further advice through you,
but,
Chair, of the
unfortunately,
officer.
the matter is dealt with, so it's open to you to
Well,
move a motion of dissent.
I'm asking through you, Chair, for further advice.
And I'm ruling that out of order because I've already ruled on the matter.
So you've refused to.
I'll have
you
to
refused
adjourn the meeting if you
question-
can't allow the meeting to proceed. That's true.
So you don't want to hear that discussion. That's terrific. I will move a motion of dissent then. Thank you.
Councillor Hesse is moving a motion of dissent in the ruling, despite the fact that we've had advice from council officers that it is a proper ruling. Is there a seconder for the motion of dissent? Seconded by Councillor Porteous. I'll put that. All those in favour?
We speak to the motion of dissent.
For people who are in a hurry to hear from the guest speakers, you seem to be getting very caught up in
I think that's
procedures.
called, you don't need to make that comment.
It's called democracy, Darcy. You should try it sometime.
Okay. Given the obnoxious nature of that interjection, it's called democracy, Darcy. You should try it sometime. I'll adjourn the meeting for 2 minutes to allow councillors to collect themselves. In the meeting. Now, councillors, as I'm sure Councillor Porteous is aware, only the mover of a motion of dissent can speak to the motion of dissent, so I'll allow Councillor Hesse to do so.
Thank you, Chair. I move my motion of dissent because it is very clear that while the officer's advice that you should proceed in a certain way, that does not preclude that you can't. Because would does not mean must. So I'm sorry, that's what my union officer told me when it came to negotiations. Then you have to have the direct word. And the Senior Industrial Officer of the National Tertiary Education Union is a matter of interest, Councillor Drury. I wouldn't want to get Ken involved in anything untoward. But I'm quite serious about this. This is a matter of significant public interest. This council has already passed a motion saying this is a matter of significant importance. In fact, it's an emergency. I think it is to simply rule it out of what, in my view,
Point of
is
order,
a
Mr.
desire.
Mayor. Listen,
Councillor Passes.
you say enough on Facebook. Don't you ever get tired of it?
That's not a point of order,
Don't you?
Councillor
Yes,
Passes.
it is. You are taking up. We've got council business tonight.
Councillor Passes, I would ask the mayor to intervene and instruct Councillor
the
Passes.
election is
There's
next
no point of
September.
order here, Councillor.
The
There is no
election
point of order,
next
Councillor.
September.
Councillor Byrne.
Sorry, I was just waiting for you to desist. Councillor Passes, that's not a point of order. Councillor Hesse, please return to your now very time-consuming argument.
Well, if you'd allowed them to speak, perhaps we'd have been done and dusted by now, I'd imagine.
Let's start the clock again.
All I can say is that it appears to me clear that some councillors in this place do not want to discuss this issue, as they don't want to discuss other issues with members of the public present. I do not regard that as a very useful way to conduct democracy. Democracy is best conducted in the open and with people present. And that is why I believe
Excuse me,
your
don't give
motion
me a
is not
lecture on
reasonable.
democracy.
Councillor Passes, you might just resume
My
your seat.
background. brought democracy
Attempting,
to you people.
attempting to,
you
Councillor.
don't know
Attempting
democracy,
to. Councillor
pal.
Passos, please resume your seat. I'll speak very briefly to explain the ruling and against the motion of dissent. Councillors, although not all members of the gallery, but all councillors will be aware that I think for every single council meeting this year until we adopted the new code of meeting practice, there was a motion moved at the start of the meeting that we suspend standing orders to deal with all the items for which there were registered speakers. That motion was generally defeated, and I was one of the people who voted against that. We concluded the matter by adopting a new code of meeting practice which is modelled on the City of Sydney's code of meeting practice, which said, no, rather than having this argument, which is very time consuming at every council meeting, we'll simply include in our code of meeting practice so it's clear for everybody that we'll hear from all the registered speakers and then we'll go on and deal with all the items, not just the items for which there are registered speakers. That was voted on democratically. It's based on Clover Moore's model at the City of Sydney. I don't believe anyone's suggesting that Clover Moore is anti-democratic. And at the meeting tonight...
Point of order, they actually have speakers at the City of Sydney at their committee meetings. They don't.
I ask you to refer to the code of meeting practice.
Oh
in
yes,
relation
I will
to
refer to the code of meeting practice actually. Under clause 8.2, it does say very explicitly that the order of business as fixed may be altered for a particular meeting of the council if a motion to that effect is passed at the meeting.
But Councillor, you were moving a point of order in relation to something that I'd said. What's the point of order?
Point of order is that's not quite correct.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm quite certain that my description of the City of Sydney's code of meeting practice is correct. At ordinary council meetings, there is a segregated component of the time. I'll move on with the explanation.
Point of order, Councillor Byrne.
Councillor.
Councillor Byrne.
Yes,
point of order.
Councillor.
The plan is for disruption.
Please proceed with your point of order. I've already ruled on Councillor...
The Inner West Council Code of Meeting Practice 8.2 says that the order of business may be altered for a particular meeting.
I'm sorry,
if the council
that's
has a motion to that effect. So it's incorrect, the advice that was being provided. The correct advice is that the order of business can be...
Okay, Councillor Porteous, I'll rule on that point of order, and then if you'd like to further delay the opportunity for us to debate the substantive issue, you could move another motion of dissent. That seems to be the tactic tonight. We have voted on a procedural motion democratically, and some councillors disagreed with that and have moved a motion of dissent. So we're now going to vote democratically on the motion of dissent, and then after that we'll either be able to go straight to the item that these registered speakers are here for, or we'll get on with the rest of the business, or there's a third option, which is people could move nonsense procedural motions for another 3 hours and delay everything. So let's just get on with it. Well, Councillor Hesse has moved a motion of dissent, seconded by Councillor Porteous. All those in favour, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That has been defeated. I have ruled and we have determined that we will get on with the rest of the business of the meeting. The first item tonight, now I might just further add for the citizens in the gallery, you're more than welcome to stay. The agenda tonight is quite short, so I believe that we'll get to your item quite soon. If you were to go home, because you couldn't stick around, you are actually able to watch the proceedings live on the internet in real time. So any suggestion that things were being hidden is obviously incorrect. Item 1, memorial planting and plaques policy. Councillors.
Point of order, Mayor. Do you want to deal with your mayoral minute first?
Oh, sorry. Thank you for that. Excellent. You've helped me out for once. That's very good. Thank you for that. We'll go to my mayoral minute in regards to the Rozelle rail yards, which was circulated to councillors last week. Councillors, notwithstanding the council's long-standing opposition to the WestConnex project, there is, I believe, a very positive opportunity to take the government at their word in relation to the legacy project that they have proposed for the Rozelle rail yards. The conditions of consent for stage 3 of WestConnex require the government to undertake a master plan for that site in order to create a very large parklands. And I think we should be taking the opportunity to work constructively with the government and with peak sporting bodies representing an array of sports and with the local community to try to create a sport and recreation precinct there, which could be opened in several years' time when the WestConnex Stage 3 project is completed, that we can all be proud of and that will benefit not only the people of the Inner West but the people of Sydney. Rob Stokes, as well as being the Minister for Planning, is now the Minister for Public Spaces. And of course, John Sidoti, who is the local member for Drummoyne, the neighbouring electorate, which is very adjacent to the Rozelle rail yards, is now the Minister for Sport. And so I think we should be seeking to work constructively and positively and collaboratively with those ministers in particular to try to bring this project to fruition. We know that in the past, where council has sought to take on a master planning role for state government controlled land, it's often resulted in confusion and delays. So I'm not proposing that we initiate the master planning process, but rather that we seek to work with the government in the process that they're required to undertake. And so I'm recommending that we write to the Minister for Planning and Public Spaces to request that he requires the Secretary of the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment to begin the work of the Design Review Panel required under WestConnect Stage 3 Environmental Impact Statement to prepare an urban design and landscape plan for the Rozelle rail yards, detailing the new recreation area to serve the local community, that we confirm that the Inner West Council, that he confirmed that the Inner West Council will be a member of the panel, that he confirms that the New South Wales Government will fund the development and delivery of the master plan for the proposed parklands and associated facilities, and that we convene a meeting with relevant stakeholders, including peak sporting bodies, local schools and WestConnects to discuss the development of the master plan. And I can confirm that I've been in touch with Mr Stokes' office in the preparation of this mayoral minute, and that they are willing and eager to work constructively with us to ensure that there is a great legacy for the project there. So I will move that way. Councillors, discussion. Councillor Stamoulis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is beginning to sound positive in terms of what can be achieved in the Rozelle marshalling yards. My issue with this motion is that it has the Inner West Council as a subordinate player in this, and I would like that strengthened. That we take on more of the activity in developing what we need. We've got a recreational needs study, of course, that will filter in this process. Other community assets and amenity that will need to filter into this process. In fact, we shouldn't be just a member of the panel. We should be the lead partner in determination of what occurs there in the Rozelle marshalling yards. And in fact, I would expect that the land would be handed over to us, and I'll put that question to the relevant officer, that the land will eventually be handed over to us. So I would like to see that strengthened there, that we take very much a lead role for our community in what will be achieved in the Rozelle marshalling yards. Otherwise, I think it's a reasonably good mayoral minute. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Further discussion. Councillor Passis.
Thanks for that, Mr Mayor, and I'm glad to see that you're the type of Labor mayor that has intelligence enough to work with the government of the day and not play politics. Councillor Stamoulis' suggestion, I can't go along with that. Until we can prove we can lead, I don't think we should ask to take lead roles. Councillor Stamoulis, you'd be aware, your ward in Balmain, Councillor Porteous and the Mayor, that we've received a letter from the head CEO of Balmain Hospital complaining about the footpaths outside the hospital in Balmain. 3 ward councillors not aware of this, and you want this council to take the lead role? Let's fix the footpaths first. A small job, council's job. Don't look to take the lead role in projects like this. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Porteous.
I'd like to thank the Mayor for this mayoral minute. I think it's a good mayoral minute. I think it's very important that we get on the front foot with this, and that we're proactive in seeking that the government addresses this now. There's always that risk that we have a promise that these lands are going to be used for community purposes, but we need to hold them on that. And I think this is a good way forward. Just a couple of issues. One is the fact that obviously we have a commitment from the government, and it is our policy as well to preserve the public transport corridor there. And I think it's very important that that is part of the discussion as well, because while we've got, the government has said that they'll do nothing to rule out a future use for light rail within the Rozelle goods yards. We want to make sure that, in fact, that is the case, because that public transport corridor is going to be really important to us moving forward. I think it's very important as well. The Mayor did flag and the local community in his speech, and I think it's very important that we don't limit the consultation to schools and sporting associations, important as they are. There are other users that will be equally important, and there are other uses that we want to consider, and we need to have other people at the table. So we've got fantastic bush care groups, for example. We've got a lot of local community groups. I would like to also see some of our West Connects action groups get involved with this as well, because they've been very actively campaigning themselves to make sure that these promises are held to by the government. So I think there's a lot of very good additional stakeholders that we need to engage in this process and include in the meeting that is being proposed to be convened. And I'd ask as well that councillors be invited to that meeting as well as representatives of their community. But all in all, I think this is a positive way forward, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. Any further discussion, councillors? If not, I'll very briefly pose the question that Councillor Stamoulis raised to whoever is the relevant officer in regards to whether the land will be handed back to council under the existing government policy.
Yes, through the chair, there has been some vague discussions around this, or vague suggestions that could come back to council, but there's no formal commitment nor written commitment from any of the parties to that fact, and it's been an ongoing issue of discussion about precisely who will own the land and who will actually pay for it to ensure it does come back to an appropriate standard.
Okay, thank you for that. I'd certainly very happy to give a public commitment to Councillor Porteous and to the community that obviously, if this process were to get underway, that council's community engagement framework would immediately come into play, and we would seek to engage the whole community in planning for what could be such a precious and important asset. Wouldn't be limited to any particular stakeholder, and I don't believe that the resolution before us precludes that. I'll now put that. All those in favour? All those against? That has been carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Kiat, for reminding me about putting forward my own mayoral minute. That's excellent. Very pleased. Item 1, Memorial Planting and Plaques Policy. Councillors.
Happy to move the motion.
Moved by Councillor Porteous, seconded by Councillor McKenna. Is anyone who wishes to speak against it or to amend it? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Petersham Portuguese Precinct name.
I'll move that.
Moved by Councillor Steer, seconded by myself. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Item 3, Sydney Eastern City Planning Panel Report. Rich Street, Marrickville. Councillors. Councillor Macri.
Chair, I'd just like to move that we endorse the staff's comments on the proposal.
Councillor Macri has moved that council endorse the submission or the comments.
The staff's comments and submission.
Endorse the
staff's recommendation.
The staff's recommendation regarding the proposal. Councillor Drury, seconding that. Any further discussion? Councillor Lockie.
Yeah, I'd just like to move an amendment on that, if I may. The council asked the panel to consider appropriate local traffic calming measures to directly address the expected increase in traffic volumes generated as a result of the proposed development. I discussed this today with the group manager of our DA department because I noticed the proposal that originally went up to the planning panel sought a deferred commencement condition on the basis that the expected traffic increase from Rich Street onto Victoria Road would go from around 670 cars a day to 1,380 cars a day, and that was potentially an underestimate as well based on the traffic consultants' projections that have been put to council. There was a fair bit of detail there about the discussions that had taken place with the RMS, with council staff, with our local traffic committee about how that expected increase would be managed. the way that staff and the RMS wanted to go forward on that was to put in a median that would prevent and basically restrict the car movement, so it would be left in, left out of Rich Street only from Victoria Road. However, and I'm paraphrasing the advice I was given today here, for reasons that we haven't been able to fully get to the bottom of, the panel has, as we can see in the report, stated that that case wasn't made strongly enough, and therefore they've recommended the removal of the deferred. They've actually approved most of the project DA already, with the removal of that deferred condition, commencement condition, and stated that just a sign would be put in place instead saying no right turn. I'm quite familiar with that road, as I'm sure many people here are as well. It's not going to cope particularly well with an increase in traffic, particularly if people do attempt that right-hand turn. So the wording I've proposed as an amendment is the wording that was suggested to me by our group manager, to basically ask the panel to consider that again so we can better manage the expected increase.
Can I seek clarification? I'm just a little confused because Councillor Lockie has alluded to a position put by the group manager in relation to this, which is different to the submission made by council officers, presumably under the authority of the group manager of development assessment, to the panel. So can I just get clarification about whether council's officers' position is reflected in the recommendation to the panel or in the statement by Councillor Lockie?
The position of officers is reflected within the assessment report. The advice that was provided to Councillor Lockie today by the group manager was that given the circumstances wherein what's known as the marker building was not formally approved the last time the panel met, it is theoretically open to the elected council to make a submission on that point if it wishes to do so.
Right.
Bearing in mind, the panel did delete that requirement on its last consideration in April.
Okay, no problem. So, Councillor Macri, that will be for consideration in yourself and Councillor Drury as to whether you would like to incorporate that into the primary motion. Councillor Hesse. Thank you for that. Please proceed.
Lockie. Look, I also have a small amendment which I've sent to up the front. And it really is, and I do thank Councillor Lockie for taking that time, and I thank officers for their submission too. And I hope that Councillor Macri might be able to include this too. It's really just a couple of points about assurances that the access to the site during construction will not use Jabez Street, Marrickville, so as to protect the tree canopy in that street from damage. It is a lot of Moreton Bay figs in that street. It's not likely, but I just want to I would like that assurance that's been raised to me by residents or people who live in the area. There's no residents in Jabez Street per se, and that the existing use of the factory theatre will not be impacted upon by occupants of the new building in Rich Street, specifically that live music and performance at the current approved standards are to be maintained. I think we want to make it very, very clear by resolution that live music venues such as the factory theatre should not be affected adversely by this construction.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillors, further discussion?
I'd really ask Councillor Macri if he's prepared to take that on board.
Okay, so further amendments have been proposed by Councillor Hesse. Councillors, further discussion? There's no further discussion at this time. I'll go to Councillor Macri and ask whether he's willing to incorporate the Lockie amendment.
Chair, I think it's a bit unfair to be actually going at this late stage in this application that's been here for such a long time, and the panel has made a ruling already. They won't be going back. There was one issue they brought back, which was the marker building, and that's the only issue they'll be looking at, in my experience with the panel. So I think these other amendments are futile.
Okay, so Councillor Macri is not agreeing to them being incorporated. They will be voted on. So we've got one amendment from Councillor Lockie, seconded by Councillor Hesse, and then two amendments from Councillor Hesse. Is there a seconder for the Hesse amendments? Seconded by Councillor Lockie. I will. So we've got the first Lockie-Hesse amendment that Council asks the panel to consider appropriate local traffic calming measures, etc. I'll put that. All those in favour, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That has been defeated. We'll move on to the next amendment. first Hesse amendment, that assurances that access to the site during construction will not use Jabaz Street, Marrickville, etc. All those in favour, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That has been defeated. Second amendment, moved by Councillor Hesse.
Could I?
Okay, that is against. That was against. It's been defeated. Second amendment from Councillor Hesse, seconded by Councillor Lockie, that the existing use of the factory theatre, etc. I'll put that. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm sorry, Councillor McKenna, I'm going to have to ask you to vote. I'll recommit the vote. We are voting on the second amendment from Councillor Hesse. It's seconded by Councillor Lockie. It reads as number 2 on the screen. So currently the existing motion is that we endorse the council officer's recommendation. This amendment would see us make a separate submission in line with the wording on the screen. Is everyone clear on that? Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those against, please raise your hands. You will actually need to raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That has been defeated.
Good.
I'll now put the primary motion. I'll just ask the gentleman here just to...
Something wrong with the screen, I can't see the screen.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to commit this vote. I'll now put the primary motion, moved by Councillor Macri, seconded by Councillor Drury. All those in favour? All those against? That has been carried with Councillor Kiat and Councillor Hesse against. Next item. Local Traffic Committee. Any amendments, councillors? If not, Councillor Macri, will you move the adoption? Seconded by Councillor Stamoulis. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Item 5, Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference. Yes, just been determined.
Yes. I've come here specifically to say something about one thing which I was told was on tonight, but I can't see it.
I'll ask you to liaise with the council officers. We have registered speakers for...
I come from like I really used to have to do that, so as an interested member, I just thought it would be fantastic if I were allowed to speak.
You're not able to. The matter's just been determined, but I will ask the council officers who are in attendance, including the Manager of Traffic, to come and talk to you about it. Next item, Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference.
Could I just get a clarification from the Mayor that we have suspended that item, or we're deferring that item while there's liaison happening on this item?
It's been adopted. I'm not recommitting it. It's adopted. We voted on it. So did you. Unanimously, it was adopted.
Well, because the community member spoke afterwards, and I think in light of the fact that the community member has indicated that she was of the
I'll call the
understanding
meeting
that she
to
could
order.
speak.
The matter's been adopted. I'm moving on to the next item.
Could I ask that it be recommitted or deferred, that we recommit to defer that until the community member has had an opportunity?
I'll seek advice from Councillor Naylor, from Mr. Naylor. Mr. Naylor, in regards to, so this item has been this resolution has been adopted. Councillor Porteous is now seeking to have it deferred. Can I get your advice about whether that is allowable under the Code of Meeting Practice?
Through the Mayor, with the latest Code of Meeting Practice, the Office of Local Government clarified this issue, and they said that votes should only be recommitted if there was an error in the vote or someone who voted for the matter felt like they were misrepresented when the vote was taken, and they're the only reasons why you should recommit.
I was misrepresented when the vote was taken.
Okay.
No,
Item 5,
no.
Local Government New South.
Point of order.
I'm sorry. No, I've already ruled on it, Councillor. I'll have to adjourn the meeting if
Mayor,
you can't discontinue.
you just recommitted the vote when Councillor McKenna was unsure how to vote.
Yes.
And
there's no indication that you were unsure at all.
Unfortunately for you, when you
I'll
recommitted
adjourn the meeting
vote,
for a period of 2 minutes.
save you money. Excuse me, what is your item? My item is Smith Street, Annandale. The problem is that I just want to explain why this is inappropriate. I can do it really quickly and easily. I have lived there for 35 years. I have been part of a big part of the community. I have worked in the area. I have what is that park, which has helped make with the council this magnificent park. This is a trophy. It's going to cost you money. These are not benefit anybody. It's a completely ridiculous thing. What am I looking at? Sorry, what's your objection? My objection is that what they've done is they're making a proposal which says that you should have no stopping except for cars, because there are long-term boats and trailers passing. Yeah, because they're not on our side. But the proposal was made. Okay, now I've been here for 35 years and I petitioned the local people. They don't access it through Smith Street. There's a footpath at the beginning, there's a footpath at the end, there are two bridges coming over, and there's the area where the filiates come. There's nobody accesses it. I have to get out.
Okay, in the meeting, we'll move on to item 5, Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference. Can I get a straw poll, show of hands from councillors who would like to attend the conference as a delegate?
Yes.
Please, do your best.
Got 1, 2.
Mayor, we did have the previous item 4, the local traffic committee. And
Been adopted.
yeah, and
Was it
I've indicated that I think my vote might have been misrepresented because I was
Well,
unaware that there
I'm
was.
sorry,
community
the
member
matter's
here.
been ruled on. I've adjourned the meeting once because you insisted on disrupting. There is no indication that you were confused at the time. You just want to pander to a
I
resident
was-
now who's not a registered speaker.
No, but the thing is, excuse me.
No, I'm
doesn't-
sorry.
I'm a member of the public.
No, I'm sorry. I'll call the meeting to order. Unfortunately, there is not scope under our code of meeting practice
Where
to
does it tell
rescind a
me that I
motion.
have to register?
I'm sorry. Could you please resume your seat, madam? I'll have to adjourn the
Mayor,
meeting.
I think it's reasonable that we let the.
I'm
member
sorry,
of the public
councillor,
speak.
you are deliberately disrupting the meeting. We've already adjourned it twice tonight because of your disruptions.
Just hearing about the public.
No, okay, that's all fine and well. I'm just trying to chair the meeting according to the code of meeting practice. Now, councillor Porteous, can we get on with item 5, for which other councillors are already engaged, or do I need to adjourn the meeting again because you insist on disrupting? Okay,
Mayor, I don't believe I'm disrupting. I'm just trying to.
get on with item 5.
I think
Local
we're just
Government New
trying
South
to
Wales
make
Annual
sure that we have a
Conference.
reasonable
Can I
approach
get
to
a
this.
straw poll of councillors who are interested in attending as delegates? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll include myself, that's 9. That's our full delegation. So I will move that councillors De Cruz, Porteous, Steer, Hesse, Lockie, Drury, McKenna, York and Byrne be elected as delegates to the conference. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by councillor Stamoulis. All those in favour?
Can I ask a
Against?
question before?
Declare that carried, yes.
Can councillors be told how much this conference is going to cost for all these councillors attending? Just for my records.
Okay, I'll take that on notice and ask the Chief Executive to provide that information to you. I don't believe there's any other, we don't need to resolve anything else, do we?
Could I ask a question through the chair?
Yes?
There's another part of the motion of the recommendation which talks about councillors tabling any motions that they want to take to the conference. What is the deadline for the lodging of those motions, and can they be brought to a future council meeting?
I'm informed that that is the 19th of August, so you will be able to lodge it for the next ordinary council meeting.
Okay, so can I move a point 3 that motions for the conference be brought to the first August meeting for consideration?
Okay. Councillor Porteous is moving that motions for conference be considered at the August 13 ordinary meeting. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by councillor Hesse. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item. Delegation to execute Tcorp loan. Councillors? Councillor Drury has moved the officer's recommendation. Is there a seconder? Seconded by councillor understand? Seconded by councillor McKenna. Councillor Passes. Oh, sorry, I didn't realise you wanted to speak to it, Councillor. Councillor Drury wishes to speak to the primary motion.
This is a straightforward matter that simply executes decisions already made.
Thank you for that. Councillor Passes.
Well, I won't be voting for this. First of all, I'm still waiting on a report of the swimming pool. It was resolved by this council that we have a monthly update on what's going on with the swimming pool. We have nothing. And I do not appreciate this being put in front of us. 40 million plus loan. We don't know where it's at, what's going on. There's been issues with it. I don't know if we still have the same project manager. Council, a lot of councillors on this council wouldn't be aware of the Civic Centre project here in Ashfield. It blew out to double the cost. It's a substandard building, requires ongoing maintenance continuously, and the Ashfield ratepayers are footing the bill for this, and I will not vote for this, and I urge councillors not to vote for it until they see an updated report. We need to know what's going on down there. There's been asbestos. Excuse me, please, I have asked, if you don't mind. Okay? Of course, you wouldn't ask, you just put your hand up for the millions. They're not yours. The ratepayers are paying for it. If we are an accountable council on such a large project...
Point of order.
Point of order from Councillor Porteous.
Councillor Passes was making a personal sort of a statement which was completely false.
Don't interject when I'm talking. Don't play games. You must have had a very good sleep this afternoon. I've never seen you with so much energy.
I call the meeting to order.
My God.
Councillor Porteous is making a point of order suggesting that Councillor Passes has made a personal slur. I'm going to rule that that is not the case and ask Councillor Passes to address the substantive issue.
And ask Councillor Porteous not to interject when I'm speaking.
Please proceed, Councillor Passes.
You just make sure your takeaway food containers full. That's all you worry about tonight. Don't worry about what I'm saying. Make sure your takeaway food's ready.
Councillor Passes, you have the floor.
Well, I've said what I wanted to say. I do not believe that we can vote for this. There's been one update by email about the asbestos. Nothing else. No way in the world can I vote for this, and responsible councillors should not either.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to go to the Chief Executive and ask about how the requirement for monthly reporting on the pool project is being carried out.
Thank you, Mayor. As councillors are aware, we've been trying to update the system reporting to provide councillors up-to-date information. I have a copy tonight of all of the major projects in that format. The council website is updated monthly on all of the capital works, and in my regular weekly note back to councillors, there was a report on the capital works included in that the week before last. But I have these and I'll circulate. It includes at the top Ashfield with the detail of where we're at. This will shortly be available, I'd hope by now, on your personal computers, so you'll be able to update it, look at it yourselves. We hope to have that within the next couple of weeks. So if I might circulate this, Mayor, so that councillors are aware of it.
Please do, but can I seek further clarification, because prior to your appointment, it certainly was a very clear resolution and preference of the council. It was very deliberately resolved that there should be monthly reporting to an ordinary council meeting for a variety of reasons on what is the largest infrastructure project that the council has ever undertaken. Will that resolution be carried out now that the new reporting system has been established?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, it is, and that's been the intention. We're looking to get a streamlined system to provide councillors with much more information of relevance than they've had previously. We have had some technical issues getting that ready, but that's our intention, and to keep it completely transparent.
Okay, Councillor Stamos.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's good news that we'll soon be receiving updates on the Ashfield pool. We've been waiting a long time. This is the biggest loan ever in the history of the Inner West, and it's the biggest project being conducted by the Inner West Council. So it's vital that we can show our public that we want to be informed about this major project and that we are receiving the required information. And if I detected the nuance from the Mayor, I'm hoping that this isn't something that I have to go into the website and get myself. It will come to me once a month proactively rather than me having to search around or forget about it. I don't want to do that. Now, my substantive question is, either to the General Manager or relevant officer, is that I noticed the loan start date is the 1st of the 5th, 2019. We are already 3 months away from that date, and I note that the interest paid is $1.34 million semi-annually. So I want to make sure that we're not paying $650,000 of interest for a loan that has not commenced yet. So if somebody could clarify the actual commencement date of that loan, that'd be wonderful.
I'll
Thank
put
you.
that question to the officers.
Yes, through the Chair, the actual loan drawdown date will be the 29th of August. We won't be paying interest until that date.
Okay. Is there anyone who wishes to...
Question, Mr Mayor.
Yes.
On the 1st of the 11th, 2019, we pay a total of $1.34 million. Would that be for a 6-month then or a 3-month? Because they're all 1.34 million, so it assumes to me that the loan's only been going for 3 months at that time. That's the question that I'm putting.
I'll put that question to the officers.
Through the Chair, the interest isn't payable until the drawdown of the loan commences.
Thank you for that. If there's no... Now, does any councillor wish to amend the motion or to speak against it? If not, Councillor Drury, I presume you don't need a right of reply. Excellent. I'll now put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried with Councillors Macri, Rosidi and Passis against. Oh, okay. Well, this is an example of where I'll recommit a vote because it was confusing. Please raise your hands if you're in favour of the motion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. All those against? Councillor Rosidi and Councillor Passis against. That has been carried. Next item. Investment report. June 30, 2019. Moved by Councillor Stamoulis, seconded by Councillor Kiat. All those in favour? Yes. Question from Councillor Stamoulis.
Councillors would be reminded that I put a question to the finance manager at the last meeting, asking why our investment balance had dropped to the second lowest since this council commenced, and I was hoping to get a response back after that meeting. We didn't receive that response back as councillors, so I'm wondering whether we have that information now as to why our investment balances have dropped down to last month, that is, they dropped down to the second lowest since this council commenced.
I'll put that question to the officers.
I'll have to take it on notice. The short answer, without having looked into it, is that we are spending our money on fixing up our assets, but I'll get a more detailed answer for councillors.
I just want to express my thanks. So everyone will know that we've reached 100% divestment of our investment portfolio from fossil fuels. That's a fantastic achievement. I just want to thank the officers who arranged for, you'll recall that when we achieved this milestone, we resolved that we would have a meeting here at council inviting chief financial officers from other councils to attend, and I believe that's now in train. So I just want to thank the officers for arranging that.
Okay, you can thank the Mayor too for my role in it. Thank you for that. Okay, next item, notice of motion, I'll put the investment report recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Item 8, notice of motion, global climate strike. Councillor Kiat.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you everyone who came in support of this motion, who came to speak. Sorry to those who came to speak and were not able to. and thanks for sticking around to watch the shenanigans and also observe the debate on this motion. What's already been said is everything we need to hear, really, but I'll go on. The global climate strike, it brings together the people whose collective futures are most threatened by the climate emergency that we face. It's led by students, even younger than myself, who are inheriting a planet that will not support their future if we don't take immediate and radical action. And crucially, it's supported by people who work for a living, through who, no fault of their own, are working in an economic system that is destroying their own future. It's an economic system that delivers greater and greater profits to the richest, while it destroys any chance that their children will live in a safe and prosperous world. So we urgently need the hundreds and thousands of well-paid, secure green jobs that will guarantee a better future. And we needed them yesterday. And we're demanding that that massive transition that we need to secure our future happens now, and that all workers' livelihoods are secured and improved in this transition. And I guess the whole point of the global climate strike is to bring together the workers' movement, the union movement, and the global climate strike, which is led by students. And this is something which is really new. This is not the environmentalism of Bob Brown, who led the Stop Adani convoy to the Galilee Basin, and then a couple of months later complained about a wind farm that would obscure the view of a wilderness in his own backyard. Neither is it the technocratic, market-oriented approach taken by the Rudd and Gillard government with respect to carbon taxes or emissions trading schemes. As Tony Burke recently observed, if you leave the climate crisis to the market and to big business, workers will rightfully feel that they're being left behind. It's just a new way for them to get screwed. So I think it's really laudable that the next generation of climate activists, led by students, know that working class struggles must be front and center of the climate movement. So it's very important that Council support the strike, primarily because it's consistent with our declaration of a climate emergency. While we take action locally, we have to recognize that this isn't enough if we want to reach the necessary goal that we completely decarbonize our economy by 2030. We need to put maximum pressure on all other levels of government. And of course, an ancillary benefit is to allow our staff to participate in the strike. Many of them will want to do this of their own accord. Many will want to attend with their kids and allow them to attend safely. And action on climate change really is now the core business of every service unit of Council, from the CEO down. So I'm looking forward to hearing your contributions to this debate. I think that it's something that we as a Council who have been progressive on climate change, who have committed to a climate emergency, should commit ourselves to.
Thank you for that. Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Hesse. Do you wish to speak to it?
Thanks, Chair. Look, I thank Councillor Tcorp for bringing this to Council, and I thank all the people who spoke tonight in support of the motion. I think in our area, this is a very uncontroversial issue. We all believe it's real. We all believe... All reasonable people believe that it's real, and I think it's...
Call the meeting to order. Councillor Hesse has the floor.
And I think it's something that we need to act on, because this truly, as the Council has voted a couple of months ago, is a climate emergency. If you talk to the professionals, the scientists, the people who study this, they know very, very clearly that this is not just something that is a problem, it's actually on the edge of a disaster. In July, I think it was in the Herald yesterday, we are running 6 degrees above the average maximum for July. It was 24 degrees today.
Call the meeting to order.
It's the middle of winter. It should not be 24 degrees, lovely as it is. For councillors concerned about precedents, I will recall being part of Marrickville Council, where in 2007, I think it was 2006 actually, I stand corrected, we voted, I know as a majority of councillors, I can't speak for Councillor Macri, but I think certainly the Green and Labor councillors voted to support exactly the kind of business that Councillor Kidd has put forward. That is, that staff be allowed to use their time in a way to attend it. We certainly allowed that for your rights at work. Some staff took that up, some didn't. It was their choice. Nothing in this motion compels staff to do anything It simply gives them the option. And I think that's what we want people to do. We want people to engage with this, not because they're told, but because it's something that is a rational thing to do. And people will make rational choices about how they engage with it, because surely in our area, it is something that we as a community, not every single one of us, as we've heard, but almost all of us, think is very, very real. So I would ask fellow councillors to support our community, to support our staff, to make this something that we act on as a community together. I actually don't want to have dissension around this. There will be people at the outer limits, I guess, but really we need to make sure we have all governments working together to address what is a real problem. This is not a matter of ideology, it's a matter of vital importance, and I hope we have your support. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillors, we've had two speakers in support of the motion. Is there any councillor who wishes to amend it or to speak against it? I've got Councillor York, then Councillor Passos.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to speak briefly. I want to thank all the speakers who came along tonight, both for coming along and enduring the shenanigans. I'm sorry that you had to sit through that, but you only had to sit through an hour of the meeting to get to the business, so it really wasn't too bad. But moreover, I'd like to thank you for your work on the climate movement. I was proud to see you and the other students go out in March. If my son, when he's a little bit older, was courageous enough to join you, I would be proud of him too. And I hope that one day he will. Well, actually, I hope that one day he won't have to. I think councillors know my commitment to the issue of climate change. I hope that is not in question. For those who haven't been to council before and seen us debate this issue, I have repeatedly moved motions about substantive action that this council can take on a number of climate matters. I find myself in agreement with a number of Councillor Kiat's opening remarks, but I find that I can't support the motion as it stands to effectively, as it reads to me and as it's been widely reported. Councillor Kiat hasn't actually sought to speak to me about it at all. So my understanding of it is that essentially what this governing body would be doing is unilaterally declaring a paid holiday for the staff to attend this rally. Now, that goes above and beyond anything that the student movement has actually called for. I've read the entirety of their support call for workers. Anything that any other organisation in support of the rally, any other action that they've taken, and in fact anything that I think any successful mass movement for change has ever done. So in Councillor Kiat's reckoning, the way that we achieve change on climate is to unite with the workers. None of the workers of this council have made any representations either through their union or through their management to this end, which is why the absolute wrong way to go about this is to unilaterally declare from a governing body that this is what should happen. I'd ask for an extension of time, please. I support students striking, but students don't strike on a Saturday. They have called their strike for a Friday for a reason, because the substance...
Just a moment. Councillor Steer has asked for a point of order. Sorry?
Councillor York asked for an extension of time, but she's got time on the clock, so she doesn't need
Well, she didn't miss a beat and she kept going until she was interrupted by the non-existent point of order. Councillor York has the floor.
The students have not sought to strike on a Friday. They are taking action on a day that impacts their essential work, which is attending school, right? We do not seek to show solidarity by declaring a unilateral paid holiday for our staff. Now, I support the strikes. I have organised student strikes in my time. In fact...
Councillor Rossetti has moved an extension of time of 1 minute, seconded by Councillor Macri. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Please proceed.
In fact, I spent quite a long time in my time in the student movement as part of the peace movement, which was the most, still to today, the most successfully organised mass movement in Australia's history. Now, that mass movement was not achieved by the governing institutions of the organisations that participated declaring from the top down that their staff would attend. The work is in the organising. The work, the engagement that Councillor Hesse talked about is in actually bringing those individuals together in support of this action. Us unilaterally declaring something from the top down is not going to change a single thing. It's not going to change a single thing. I support no penalty for our staff to attend, but I do not support the idea that we achieve a mass movement with this organisation with no representation from the staff, either through the management or through the union. No consultation with the staff, either through the management or through the union. It has not happened at all. And why should this council be singled out for that? It happens in the workplace, Councillor Kiat. Have you organised your workplace, Councillor Kiat?
Thank you,
Have you
Councillor.
made this demand of your own workplace and of your own sector?
Councillor York, your time is
I see no evidence of that. This is a stunt. It's another stunt, and I will not be subjected to it.
Councillor York, your time has expired. Councillor Passos.
You just took the words out of my mouth. I'd like to know if he's a stunt, and absolutely a most dopey stunt. I would like to know, Councillor Kiat, can I put a question, Mr Mayor, to him? Have you asked your firm to let all the staff have the day off and be paid?
I'll ask the minute taker to stop the clock, and I'll pose that question to Councillor Kiat.
For Councillor Passis's information, I no longer work for a law firm. I work at a union.
Oh, mate. Oh, well, union, so you're trying to go
I'll
up
ask
there now.
Councillor Kiat to address the
Maybe
question.
you lost your job because
Sorry.
the staff,
No, Councillor
the firm did not want to go along with it. Now, first of all,
I'll just confirm I was
My,
not fired from my... Sorry, am I answering the question or...
you answered it.
Well, no.
No,
I
you
hadn't.
answered the question. As far as I'm concerned, this motion's unlawful.
No, I didn't finish
Secondly,
answering the question.
yes, you did.
No.
You don't work for the law firm anymore.
Call the meeting to order.
I
Councillor
still have a
Passos
job.
has posed a question.
Yeah, I can understand why.
I'll call the meeting to order. Councillor Passos has posed a question that could be described as a rhetorical device. Councillor Kiat has made a response which could also be described as a rhetorical device. Councillor Passos has the floor.
Now, first of all, you are putting staff in a compromising situation. Maybe there are staff like me that do not believe that there's a climate emergency. So, yeah, maybe staff that work together that they could get on very well, but people, they don't ask each other what their views are on these social issues. Maybe staff that don't want to go will be deemed as horrible people that don't believe the emergency with climate change. First of you have got on this council and done nothing but put motions up that have nothing to do with our municipality. You have not put forward, you or your colleagues, one issue in the best interest of our residents. If you think calling for this type of motion is helping our residents, I'm sorry, you are wrong. They want lids replaced on their garbage. They want their streets swept. They want someone to answer the phone when they telephone. They want rates that aren't so high. This is what people want. They want rats cleaned up out of the street. They want rubbish picked up. The climate change, if someone believes... If you believe in climate change, and any staff member does, they are quite welcome to have their own views and rally accordingly. If you're looking to go state or federal and you're using council as a platform, I'm afraid to say you're treated as a joke in the public, so you haven't got far to go. May I advise you, if you're looking for a career further in politics, sit down, be quiet, learn, and once you get in there, then you can play your games.
Thank you for that. Councillor Drury. Councillor Drury.
Like Councillor York, I thank those who have come up to speak to us tonight in relation to the strike to be held on the 20th of September. Like Councillor York, I probably will attend that. But I will choose I will take the consequences of attending and may lose some pay to attend. I cannot support the notion here about us deciding that members should be paid to take strike action. I don't know any unionist in this country who really, if they thought about that, supports that contention. That is certainly not a view which would be within the mainstream of the labour movement within Australia. If people believe in something, if they genuinely believe in something, they should act and take those consequences. I support the students in what they're doing, and I think that if staff members wish to do it, then that's fine. I can't support us as a governing body supporting this resolution.
Councillor Stamoulis, then Councillor Porteous.
Fellow councillors, I detect the direction that this motion might be going in, and I'm a little bit concerned by it. And I think council needs to show a great expression of support for the global climate strike on September the 20th. We don't want to see a motion like this go down. It's too important, and it's something where we attach the values of this council to, is the climate, our environment, and an activity like this, the global climate strike. I'm going to put forward a foreshadowed motion whereby I will take item 2 from the Kiat-Hesse motion, and that is that council needs to publicly endorse this through our traditional methods, that is our website, the courier, get many people within our community who have great dedication and commitment to this issue, and we can get them to come to this global climate strike. So it's very important. I would hope that all councillors would feel comfortable with that. I think that Councillor York has got it right. Councillor Kiat, you've missed this slightly. I think there's a complexity of issues here that I think you've missed, and it would have been better for you to have gone through the appropriate discussions to have maybe circumvented that. But I want to get a motion forward that's going to be workable. So I'm saying that we foreshadow part 2, that is that we do make every effort to get our community there in their hundreds or thousands or whatever it might be. I'm even inclined to put forward, I'd rather put it forward as an amendment, but I'll attempt to assert it in this motion. It can be knocked out, that in fact the Inner West Council demonstrates its commitment to the global climate strike by sending a delegation of, say, 10, 15 staff to represent the Inner West Council, those that would feel comfortable to do so. So the Inner West Council to demonstrate its commitment to the global climate strike by sending a delegation of, say, up to 15 staff. Thank you.
Councillor Porteous.
Look, if you want to know what's wrong with Australia and why we're not taking the action that we should be on climate change, you really need to look no further than my colleagues on the other side tonight and what they've said about supporting this incredibly important climate action. Advocacy is not a dirty word. Striking is not a dirty word. Standing up for what you believe in is not
I'll call
a
the
dirty
meeting
word.
to order. Councillor Porteous has
Councillor
the
York,
floor.
this is not a stunt. This is an incredibly important action that needs to be taken right across Australia, right across every workplace, right across every organisation. And yes, Councillor Passis, even you, we want to see at this on the 20th of September. Even you need to be there. If you ever
I'll
had
call the meeting to order.
a sense
Councillor Porteous has the
that
floor.
the council that has now become a forcibly amalgamated Inner West Council has lost what we had with Leichhardt Council and Marrickville Council and Ashfield Council, where we had true solidarity with our community, where we worked together with our staff. I remember proudly walking in many walk against warmings with our staff. I remember standing at many rallies with our staff. I
Call the
remember
meeting to
our
order.
staff
Order. Councillor
on
Porteous
Leichhardt
has the floor.
Council being with us in many of the fights that we took on for our local community and for the whole of our wider community. This council has taken some excellent actions in terms of tackling climate change, but they have been inwardly looking. We also need to be outwardly looking. This action that we're asking to have support for tonight is outwardly looking. It's not just taking the 100% renewables, which are all excellent initiatives, but it's saying, what are we doing for our wider community? What are we doing for our wider community, which is not just the Inner West, which is not just Sydney, but it's the whole of Australia, and it's global. And we have a responsibility to the wider community as well. This council has become a corporation. I hear councillors on the other side talking as if we are a corporation. We are not a corporation. We are a political entity. We are a political organisation. We are born of politics. We are politics. And we have a proud tradition in this area of being progressive. And for goodness sake, if we're not going to stand up for this, if we're not going to say, yes, we should be striking for climate change, then who is going to do that?
I'll call the meeting to order. I'll call the meeting to order, Councillor Passis. Councillor Porteous has the floor.
This is something that we need to do, as has been said by others, not just for ourselves and for our community and for our council, but for future generations, and particularly for future generations. And I think it's important tonight that we have heard from young people, because this is where it's critically important. To vote no to this is to vote no to what we really believe in, we should be believing in as councillors, every council on this council. So I would ask councillors to rethink, be brave, be courageous. If you do believe in acting on climate change, let's see it tonight. And vote for this. Thank you.
I wish to speak against both the primary motion and the foreshadowed motion from Councillor Stamoulis, but I'd like to preface my explanation for that with a very brief update about what the council has undertaken in relation to emissions reduction. As Mr Case, who's in attendance tonight, will be aware, at the very first council meeting after the 2017 election, we put forward a suite of policies to make this council a national leader in relation to renewable energy and carbon emission reductions. We very recently brought online our contract with the Mayoral solar farm, which now sees us making, I think, half of all of our daytime energy usage, bringing that from the Mayoral solar farm. We are very soon to announce our solar schools project, which will enable every public school in the Inner West, and hopefully Catholic schools too, to install rooftop solar. And there's a range of other things that we've undertaken. We've reached 100% divestment for fossil fuels, the first council in New South Wales ever to do it. I believe the first council in Australia. So we're doing a lot off our own bat. And I think that's an important context. And I don't believe that the primary measure of this council's commitment to this issue is the protests that we endorse or attend. It's what we actually do ourselves with the things that are under our control. I don't support the primary motion for the reasons that have been outlined by other councillors. And I concur with the arguments about the nature of industrial action, which is workers who go on strike choose to forego their pay. That's why it's called struggle. That's why when you do it with other workers, it's called solidarity, because you're giving something up. But I'm also opposed to the second part of the motion, which Councillor Stamoulis has put forward as a motion. As a parent, I would feel very comfortable with my children approaching me about whether they wanted to attend the climate strike. Now, they're 3.5 and 7, so they're probably some distance from being able to do that. They're not allowed to cross the street yet by themselves. But I would feel extraordinarily uncomfortable with a politician, or anyone else, to be frank, having a conversation with my kids about whether they should truant school or not. I support the kids who've done it. I have no problem with endorsing their joint parental and child decision to do so. But I completely reject that anybody else has the right to have a conversation with my kid or pass a motion in relation to that or pass them.
Point of order.
Yes, councillor.
I don't believe I've made that reference or inference at all in my motion.
I'll continue on because you haven't referenced the Code of Meeting Practice. As I say, in point 2, where it is referenced that we should encourage schools to allow kids to attend the rally without penalty, I don't believe that's our business. Exactly. I don't believe it's our business to tell minors to leave school and attend a protest. Now, that might be interpreted by Councillor Porteous as a conservative outlook, but I tell you, as a parent, I don't give a damn. I call it parental responsibility. So I oppose the primary motion. I oppose the foreshadowed motion. To be blunt, it's a poor motion. Don't try and fix it. Just vote against it. If there's no further discussion, Councillor Macri.
Chair, I think this is all about leadership, and I believe the best part of leadership and projecting the right thing to do is do it yourself. Yeah. And we should be looking inward, not projecting out and telling other people what they should be doing when we are not doing what we are telling them they should be doing. And I believe it puts staff in a terrible position. I believe it politicises staff, and that is not their role. Their role is to serve the community in an apolitical manner. And paid protesters, well, that's the tag they'd be getting, and there's no meaningful representation there. So when I look back, I say, well, what are we doing? And we talk about the council. Well, they talk about this side of the chamber. Well, I'll talk about that side of the chamber, who built netball courts in Hawthorn Parade over precious blades of grass, which I hear create wonderful oxygen when we had them in Tempe. That came from that side of the chamber. And you didn't do anything about that. The fact that we're still operating out of not 1, 2, 3, but 4 buildings because we can't get an energy efficient building to house all of us. And realistically, my concerns are more grounded, and to date, only today another resident came in tripping over a footpath in Petersham Road that was savagely uneven due to a tree issue. Now, those are the things that we should be doing. Councillor Hesse, say what you like, mate. I think you're more part of the problem than the cure here. And let me just make one clear point about how bright you people are on the other side of the chamber, bragging about your 100% renewable target you've reached. When you all go down to the petrol station and fill your cars up with petrol, but how bright you are. When you approved the funding for the pool, you approved that we won't be able to achieve that 100%. We will not be able to get that, otherwise we won't secure the funding. That's part of the agreement that's written in this document in front of you. So don't be bragging about it when you've just given it away.
Yes. Councillors, further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll go to Councillor Kiat for his right of reply.
He says that every time you don't live here, Councillor Macri.
He doesn't.
Yes?
Kingsgrove, very nice, I believe.
Good luck to him. Yeah. Good luck to him.
Call the meeting to order. Councillor Kiat has the floor. I'll call the meeting to order. Councillor Kiat has the floor.
Pays rates here.
I'll call the meeting to order. Councillor Kiat
And much more
has
rates
the
than
floor.
Councillor Hesse has ever paid.
Call the meeting to order, or I'll adjourn the meeting if this continues.
I beg your pardon.
I
Councillor
do
Hesse,
actually, Councillor Hesse, I do.
Councillor Hesse, just as a general rule, you don't bring people's family members into it. I'll give Councillor Kiat the right of reply.
Look, it's extremely disappointing to hear. Well, look, as a councillor, as a progressive councillor who joined a council who we were promised it would be the most progressive council in the country. But
I'll call the meeting to order. Councillor Kiat has the floor. Councillor Kiat, please proceed.
directly after the mayor was elected as mayor by the 8 on that side, we were promised this would be the most progressive council in the country. Yet when we see the 8 on that side, and particularly the Labour and Liberal councillors, saying that you've taken the words out of my mouth on an issue about climate change and supporting a strike, we've gone astray. We
Call the meeting to order. Councillor Kiat has the floor.
we've got,
Learn how to be a unionist.
I'll call the meeting to order. I will adjourn the meeting in a moment.
Go and have a lesson to be a unionist.
Councillor Kiat has the floor.
we've got to listen to the students who come to us and say, support our strike.
Exactly.
We've got to support the unionists who come to us and say, support our strike. We've got to support the climate activists who say the same. And I thank those who came here today. I'm sorry about the tone of the debate. I don't think I need to respond to every piece of argument that's been made.
If it's such an emergency, everybody would be out there anyway.
Okay,
You
Councillor
wouldn't have to
Passes,
pay them.
Councillor Passes, please desist.
If people were
At the next interjection of any kind, I will adjourn the meeting. Councillor Kiat. There you go. That's the next interjection. I'll adjourn the meeting for a period of 2 minutes.
I believe I was saying I don't feel the need to respond to every argument that was made. I don't feel that all of that was particularly useful. But I just want to comment that to the suggestion that I am undercutting what the strike organisers are trying to do. In fact, I did contact one of the strike organisers. They provided me with a worker participation guide. It expressly references what Comrade Dillon mentioned, which is that at the University of Sydney, they were granted workplace-wide permission for all staff and students to participate without penalty. Now that's exactly what we're trying to do. And I guess to tell students who are organising this strike that you're not doing it the right way, well, I just don't think that's fair. I think we need to respect what they're doing and follow their lead, and that's what I'm trying to do. I think I'll finish on, I think Councillor Drury made an important point. This is not in the mainstream of the labour movement. Unfortunately, it isn't. That's a fact. We've got a couple of unions joining the strike. We've got some unions endorsing a Green New Deal. We have some unions realising that the climate movement and workers' movement must unite. Otherwise, we will not have the wealth that for our future, for our children, for their children. We will not have a planet on which we can have, on which we can survive, let alone improve our conditions and improve our livelihoods. It's not in the mainstream of the labour movement. We need to take leadership on this, and that's what I'm trying to do tonight. I do believe that a lot of our staff will participate in this strike, despite what this council votes tonight, and we should be proud of them and we should encourage them to do so. And I know that a lot of senior managers have buy-in on this as well, and I hope that they can arrange for their staff to attend if they need to.
Okay, I'll now put the Kiat-Hesse motion. If that's defeated, we'll deal with the foreshadowed motion from Councillor Stamoulis. I'll put the primary motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That has been defeated. We'll go to the foreshadowed motion moved by Councillor Stamoulis. Is there a seconder for the foreshadowed motion?
I'll second it so we can put our hand up against it.
Seconded by Councillor Passis. All those in favour, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That has been defeated.
Oh, bad luck.
I declare the meeting closed. Mr. Case, I'm sorry to tell you you're not allowed to take photographs in the council chamber. That's okay. I'm sure it was a misunderstanding. The